Welcome to Unsolved Nightmare. Tonight, we try to understand a quiet boy, Jeffrey Dahmer, seemingly normal childhood, but something else was there too.
Yeah, there were signs early on, like even in childhood, not really connecting with other kids.
A sense of isolation, almost from the beginning.
Right. Kept to himself, not a lot of close friends.
That feeling of being different. It's a pattern, isn't it?
It really is. You see it so often in these cases, this sense of being an outsider, like they don't belong.
And Dahmer's home life was hardly a haven. His parents, their marriage was falling apart, and Joyce, his mother, she really struggled, especially during her pregnancy.
Oh, absolutely. The sources paint a very clear picture of that.
Severe nausea, couldn't stand any kind of noise. 7 months pregnant, they moved in with his grandmother, Catherine,
Can you imagine?
just to get some peace and quiet.
Yeah, it sounds like the pregnancy itself was really traumatic for her.
And then the breastfeeding. She stopped abruptly, as making her anxious, apparently. She even bound her breasts. There were arguments with Lionel, his father. And then she was found, can you believe this, lying in a field in her nightgown.
It sounds like a complete breakdown.
Doesn't it? You have to wonder how all of that affected Jeffrey as a baby.
Oh, absolutely. You know, those early years are so crucial for development, for attachment.
It makes you think about that sudden separation.
Right. From the breast, that closeness, that nourishment.
For some babies, it might not be a big deal, but for others.
Could be a huge trauma. At that age, they can't really process it. Just this primal sense of loss.
Then at age 4, the hernia operation. That seems to have really stuck with him.
He did talk about that a lot, yeah.
Pain. Years later, he said it felt like his genitals had been cut off.
Oh, wow.
Joyce wrote in her diary
Yeah.
about how much he disliked the doctor afterwards.
You know, for a child that age, surgery like that, so intimate, invasive.
It must have been terrifying.
It probably felt like a violation. You can't really explain it to them at that age.
And then as he gets older, these very disturbing interests, dead animals. He collected them.
Yeah, not unusual for kids to be fascinated by animals.
But this was different. Skeletons, moths, all pinned and labeled, jars full of insects, and formaldehyde, like a little museum.
Formaldehyde.
He even had an animal graveyard, little
Love
crosses,
that.
skulls,
That's a little more than a typical kid's fascination with nature, wouldn't you say?
and then the dissections. A mole,
Yeah.
a pig. He kept the pig skull.
So much death. You have to wonder what was going on in his mind.
That's a good question. And there was that incident at school, kids choking each other.
As a game.
Yeah, like a game.
Kids do weird things, I guess.
But even then, it seemed unsettling.
Oh, yeah. Knowing what we know now, it's hard to see it as just kids being kids.
Right. And back home, things were just getting worse. Joyce's drug use escalated. In 1970, he was about 10.
Right.
She was physically shaking.
From withdrawal.
I think so.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey himself said that his parents clearly didn't like each other. It made him decide, right then and there, never to get married.
Wow.
Can you imagine being that young and making that decision?
It speaks volumes, doesn't it, about the atmosphere in that house.
Just constant tension, unhappiness.
Absolutely. It's like a breeding ground for that sense of isolation.
And Lionel, the father,
Yeah.
he tried to connect, to get Jeffrey involved.
He did.
Tennis,
Yeah.
Boy Scouts. But Jeffrey, no interest, just apathy.
Right. Like nothing could reach him.
And his brother David, he said Jeffrey always spoke in this flat monotone, no emotion, like a robot.
From a very young age.
Yeah.
That's eerie, isn't it? Almost like he was already shutting down emotionally.
And then his sexual interest started to emerge, but it wasn't normal.
How so?
He was fixated on photographs of muscular torsos, hairless chests,
Huh.
focusing on the chest and abdomen during masturbation.
Okay.
But the thing is, it wasn't about the person. It was about possessing that body.
That's a very specific...
Detachment, isn't
Yeah.
it? No emotional connection, just this desire for the physical form.
It's like the person, the individual, didn't even matter.
Exactly. And then the divorce. The court ordered a psychological evaluation for Joyce.
Right. Right.
And the psychologist's report was pretty damning. Severe emotional problems, anger, frustration, refused to talk about her own behavior.
So basically, not in a good place.
Not at all. But here's the thing that gets me. Nobody seemed to care about Jeffrey in all of this.
What do you mean?
Like, nobody considered where he would live, what he needed. He was just there.
So he was basically invisible.
Yeah, kind of. And he couldn't get a date for his senior prom. Maybe because of the drinking. Maybe because he was just awkward.
Yeah, I can see that.
Another little rejection. And then this fantasy starts.
Oh, yeah.
At age 15, he'd fantasize about a man lying still, maybe even dead.
Oh.
During masturbation. I mean,
It's a pretty disturbing image.
isn't it? And it gets worse. In 1978, the first killing, Stephen Hicks.
Hitchhiker.
Yeah, picked him up hitchhiking.
Yeah.
Dahmer immediately panicked. Terrified, apparently.
Right. Like even he.
Knew it was wrong.
Yeah, maybe. But then it shifts to fear of getting caught.
And he almost did.
Oh.
3 a.m., driving around with Hicks's remains in his car.
Oh, my God.
Gets pulled over. Cop asks him what he's doing.
What did he say?
Taking trash to the dump.
In the middle of the night.
His excuse? Parents' divorce. Couldn't sleep.
And the cop bought it.
The flashlight even shone on the bags for a second. But he let him go.
Unbelievable.
Then comes the army. He finds out his dog died.
Yeah.
Frisky.
Sad.
But he said he didn't feel much of anything.
Huh.
He even remarked on it, like it was strange.
A lack of emotion again.
And he becomes a medic,
Oh.
learning all these skills that he would later use to,
Yeah.
to hurt people,
It's chilling.
isn't it? Stationed in Germany. An older sergeant propositioned him.
Did he?
No, turned him down. But he was going to these homosexual bookstores,
Mm-hmm.
buying pornography.
So there's this conflict.
Right. He wants to be with men. But he's ashamed of it.
The internalized homophobia.
Yeah. He feels isolated, like he doesn't fit in anywhere.
Makes sense.
He gets back home. Arrested at the Ramada Inn.
What for?
Drunk and disorderly.
Yeah.
Drinking vodka straight from the bottle. Refusing to leave. Shouting at the cops.
Sounds like a mess.
Total mess. Charged with disorderly conduct. Resisting arrest.
So it's escalating. The self-destruction.
Absolutely. And then he moves in with his grandmother. Someone asked him if he loved her.
What did he say?
She's lived in the house a long time.
That's...
Evasiveness.
Yeah. Like he couldn't even say the word love.
He talked about this longing, this desire for intimacy. But
It wasn't normal.
no, he wanted to feel another man's heartbeat, their internal organs.
That's getting into...
Dangerous territory.
Yeah. It's like the line between intimacy and violence is completely blurred.
1986. Ambassador Hotel. Boy and Blair.
Oh, I remember reading about this.
Blair wakes up in his room, naked, doesn't remember anything.
Hours missing.
Hours missing. Dahmer was there. Seems like he might have.
Done something. But not killed him.
Yeah. Blair avoided him after that.
I don't blame him.
And then the therapy sessions.
Yeah.
With Dr. Rosen. Indecent exposure. But Dahmer was just angry, paranoid, wouldn't talk about anything personal.
Sounds like a therapist's nightmare.
Dr. Rosen was ready to give up.
Yeah.
And there was this one time he drank rum, blacked out, woke up, and couldn't find the bottle.
That's scary. Not remembering.
He was afraid of what he might have done.
Yeah.
But he couldn't remember.
The alcohol.
Fueling it.
Yeah.
And then Dahmer himself. He talked about this struggle between knowing right and wrong, but feeling this compulsion.
The compulsion
to do these things. He even compared it to possession.
Possession, like
demonic possession.
Oh.
He wondered if he was evil or if Satan was influencing him.
It's like he was trying to make sense of it.
This battle inside him, good versus evil.
Right.
It's almost like he's grasping at straws.
Makes you wonder if he really believed it or if it was just a way to
distance himself from the responsibility.
Yeah, maybe.
Tracy Edwards, you know, the one who got away.
Oh, yeah.
He said Dahmer was rocking back and forth, chanting, right before the cops came.
Like a trance?
Almost. It's like that possession he talked about was real.
Scary thought.
And he said, this desire to have someone, it never went away. It was constant.
It's all consuming.
Especially when he lived with his grandmother.
That he was trying to fill this void.
With another person.
Yeah.
But not in a healthy way.
No. In a very possessive way.
Ronald Flowers. This one's strange. Dahmer takes him back to his grandmother's.
Oh.
Flowers is suspicious. Dahmer doesn't have a car. He's nervous.
And then?
They have coffee. Flowers passes out. Wakes up in the hospital 2 days later.
What?
Missing some belongings. But no signs of drugs. No sexual assault.
That's bizarre.
Isn't it like a test run, maybe? After that, the family decided Dahmer had to move out.
His grandmother kicked him out.
Pretty much. She was creeped out by him, by his friends.
I can imagine.
So he goes to treatment for alcoholism.
Oh, that's good.
But at the same time, He's obsessed with Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yeah, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
He identified with the Emperor, even bought yellow contact lenses.
That's a little...
Creepy.
Yeah, a little creepy.
He gets a job at the Ambrosia Chocolate Factory.
Chocolate factory.
Yeah, just this ordinary job, physical labor you'd never suspect.
The darkness inside.
And then Edward Smith. Eddie. He kills him in his apartment.
This is getting worse.
That's more gruesome now. Boiling body parts in a kettle with wallpaper remover.
Wallpaper remover.
Yeah. He wanted to keep the skeleton, but it fell apart. So he used acid to dissolve the bones in a trash can.
Oh, God.
Eddie was promiscuous, did drugs, but he was also trusting, friendly.
That makes it even worse.
Doesn't it? And then Stephen told me, Dahmer didn't mean to kill him, or so he said.
He didn't remember.
Claimed he blacked out.
Another blackout.
After Tuomi, Dahmer said something changed. He felt like his morality was shot.
Like a switch flipped.
Yeah, and he gave up, fighting his urges.
So it's a turning point.
A very dark one.
Yeah.
He starts picking up men at bars, drugging them.
The same pattern.
But now it's all about keeping them, possessing them. Luis Montanez, Lasha. He actually stayed the night willingly after they met at a bar.
Oh.
Dahmer planned to kill him, but he ran out of sleeping pills.
Really?
Yeah. They agreed to meet up again, but Dahmer killed him anyway. Cold. Calculated.
That's terrifying. The premeditation.
And then Tracy Edwards.
The one who escaped.
Yeah, he got away and led the police right to Dahmer.
Thank God.
Dahmer bragged about acquiring victims. He mentioned Ronald Flowers, Tony Hughes.
Bragged.
Yeah. He'd spend the night just touching them, looking at them.
The bodies.
Yeah. And he got frustrated if they woke up. Made it harder to strangle them.
Oh, my God.
He told Dr. Pecker. His moral compass was shot. He lived for the weekends.
The weekend.
That's when he'd go out looking for victims.
Right.
He watched Exorcist 2 all the time.
The horror movie.
Yeah. He said he was corrupt, evil, but sometimes he'd have sex with them and not kill them.
Without the killing.
Yeah.
Why?
He said he didn't like them as much when he was sober.
That's
messed up.
Yeah.
He posed the bodies in the bathtub
How?
in ways that emphasized their chests. And he'd open their mouths, put his penis inside,
It's all soft.
violating.
Yeah.
He started dismembering them.
Oh, God.
He was fascinated with their stomachs, the organs. He'd cut them open, touch their intestines,
Oh, God.
even have sex with the organs,
Wow.
or use them for masturbation. And he'd wash his hands before taking pictures.
It's like ritualistic.
It's like he knew it was wrong, but he couldn't stop.
He was aware on some level.
He said it himself, that normal people would be sickened by what he did.
And he wasn't.
He said he didn't feel anything. That's the scary
The
part.
lack of remorse.
Yeah. He wanted a partner who wouldn't move.
What?
Yeah, like a doll. He compared it to a kid's fear of sharing their toys. And it escalated from fantasies to stealing a mannequin to drugging people. And finally, in necrophilia. 9 years between the first and second killing.
That's a long time.
It is, like he was fighting it for a while.
But eventually.
The darkness one, there are comparisons to other killers. Peter Curtin, he killed for sexual pleasure, tortured animals, necrophilia,
Yeah.
and Ed Gein
The one who.
made clothes out of skin.
Yeah.
He was also a necrophiliac,
Disturbing.
but outwardly
Yeah.
polite, normal,
It's like they wear a mask.
to hide the monster underneath
Connor Eck, synthosomphone. He was the brother.
of one of Dahmer's previous victims.
Right. Right.
He met him at the mall.
The Grand Avenue Mall.
Yeah. Offered him money to pose for pictures. Conrack was hesitant at first, but he went with him back to Dahmer's apartment.
And German job.
Drugged him, sexually assaulted him. But it goes even further. He wanted to create zombies.
Zombies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through surgery, he wanted to control them completely, keep them alive,
Oh, my God.
not just
What?
possess their skulls.
Like a whole other level of
Where's that?
depravity. July 15th. Oliver Lacey. Jeremiah Weinberger.
Lacey was drugged.
Mm.
Weinberger beheaded. Dahmer called in sick to work because he wanted to keep Lacey.
Oh, my God.
It's like nothing else mattered. A week before his arrest,
Yeah.
he realized he had to move out of his
I can
apartment,
see you.
his shrine.
Yeah.
He thought about getting a chest to store the remains.
A chest.
Yeah, like a treasure chest. But he also thought about stopping.
Stopping.
He wondered if he could have a better life.
Wow.
But too late.
Yeah. He was already in too deep.
It all comes back to control, doesn't it?
In what way?
That feeling of losing control as a baby during that surgery.
Yeah.
He's trying to get it back.
Bye.
Controlling his victims, doing to them what was done to him. And the shrines, the skulls, the skeletons. That was his ultimate expression of control.
In a way.
This twisted, macabre idea of beauty. His companions in a hostile world,
So
distorting.
yeah.
And then the arrest. Tracy Edwards. He escapes, flags down the police. They go to Dahmer's apartment. Everything. Photographs,
Yeah.
body parts. The nightmare was real. They evaluate him.
Psychologically.
Yeah. Dr. Kenneth Smale. He says Dahmer's fit to stand trial.
So the question becomes,
Sanity.
was he sane?
The prosecution. McCann. They argued he was.
In control of his actions.
Responsible for his choices. The defense. Boyle. They wanted to prove he was insane. Two very different strategies. The public was horrified
Of course.
by what they learned.
It was a huge story.
Huge. Picking the jury took forever.
Why?
All the media attention. They had to sequester them for 2 weeks.
Wow.
They had to find people
Huh.
who could be impartial. It was that big of a deal. And then the psychiatrists.
Yeah.
They became so important to the case.
Right, because it all came down to
His mental state.
Exactly.
Dr. Berlin testified for the defense.
He said Dahmer was.
Mentally ill.
But McCann, the prosecutor, he went after Berlin hard.
Really?
Yeah. Challenged his qualifications, his experience with murder cases.
Trying to discredit him. And the insanity defense.
It's a tough one.
It is. The McNaughton rule.
Right. That's the standard.
You have to prove that the defendant couldn't tell right from wrong.
Because of a mental disease.
Yeah.
And Dahmer.
He was so ordinary in court.
Ordinary.
Quiet. Wouldn't make eye contact. He'd gained weight in prison. And he wouldn't wear his glasses.
Huh.
It's like he was trying to.
Disappear.
Yeah.
Blend in.
And George Palermo testified for the defense.
What did he say?
He downplayed the confessions, said the details of the crimes.
They might have been exaggerated or misinterpreted.
It was a risky strategy.
It was.
And then Dr. Park Dietz.
Ah, yes.
He testified for the prosecution. He said Dahmer's behavior.
Even the zombie stuff.
It was all about achieving his goals.
Meaning,
He wasn't insane.
Dietz is a controversial figure.
He is.
He's testified in a lot of high-profile cases.
And McCann.
The prosecutor.
He just kept hammering away at the insanity defense, emphasizing Dahmer's choices, his control. He wanted to make sure that Dahmer was held responsible.
And the verdict.
Guilty.
Yeah.
But mentally ill.
So, they acknowledged that he was sick.
But they still held him accountable for what he did. And the families of the victims, they gave impact statements.
Powerful.
Heartbreaking. They talked about their grief, their anger, their need for justice.
It's important that they had that chance to be heard.
It is. So, necrophilia, it's classified as a paraphilia.
Right. It's a deviation from what's considered normal sexual.
And it's rare, compulsive, irresistible. And then there's this question.
Oh.
Nature versus nurture.
Was Dahmer born this way, or did his experiences
make him a monster?
He even wondered himself if he was evil or if it was Satan. This idea of possession, it's ancient.
It is, and it speaks to something, this need to explain.
The unexplainable. And then there's the aggression, the sex, all mixed up together.
They often are.
Maybe it was because he felt powerless.
In other areas of his life, yeah. So he took control in the most horrific way imaginable. There's this thing called Wendigo psychosis.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It's some Native American cultures. This overwhelming urge to eat human flesh.
They believe it's caused by
an evil spirit.
Possessing them.
Like Swift Runner.
Right. He killed and ate his family.
And cannibalism has always been taboo. But it also has these
symbolic meanings.
Religious rituals.
Oh.
Like communion. It's complicated.
It is.
And then the insanity defense. It's so hard.
Because we want justice, but we also have to consider
mental illness. And the public, they get outraged when someone's found not guilty.
Because they were insane. It's understandable.
It is
an emotional response.
It's something so horrific.
And psychology, it has its limits.
It does. How do you measure a mind like Dahmer's?
How do you even begin to understand it?
It's almost impossible.
It is.
A quiet boy. Signs missed or ignored.